It's the worst of the CBC for November 30th, 2019, the show where I watch the CBC so you don't have to. Now, this episode could easily take in the last 2 days as well, although I was incredibly busy, so I didn't have time to make one. I think we all know what was probably the worst covered story of the day, and that is the London Bridge terrorist attack. Now, the terrorist, Usman Khan, had a prior terrorism conviction and was let out early on parole because he argued that his sentence for trying to plan a Mumbai-style terrorist attack, in his words, so trying to kill hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of people, was too long. So convicted for a 2012 terrorist attack, I guess 2013. So he served less than 10 years in prison on a terrorism sentence, gets out of prison and goes on a knifing, stabbing spree, and we all know the story. Now, there were 2 other terrorist attacks the other day, a bomb planted in Paris, another stabbing in Geneva. Now, what I'm going to point out, though, is on the CBC, and maybe on the BBC, because I don't get BBC here because we live in a country that isn't with Jeremy Corbyn in it, you can guess what phrase was not said. Never once did they name the motive. Oh, terrorism. What type of terrorism? Radical Islam. Yes, the words radical Islam were never used. And this is so absurd. And this is what drives people crazy. And this is what leads to the rise of far-right reciprocal terrorism. Because when the terrorist attacks in New Zealand or the ones in Germany committed by white supremacists, the media got out and said, this is white supremacy. In Canada, because of a white supremacist terrorist attack in New Zealand, a Canadian government named the problem white supremacy. There was a whole thing on it. Everyone said white supremacy. It would be stupid and evil if we didn't acknowledge that the terrorist attack on the New Zealand mosque, the Canadian mosque too, Quebec, was motivated by a particular ideology. And it would be obscene and absurd to not name that ideology and have a conversation about it. The ideology would be white nationalism or white supremacy, where you can say it's anti-Islam motivated. Yes, there are clearly motivations for those. But when an Islamic terrorist attack happens, not once do we name the root cause. This man had a prior terrorism conviction, was part of an al-Qaeda cell, was recruiting people to an extremist Islamist camp in Pakistan and raising money for it. He was known to authorities. And yet police are following around Tommy Robinson in the UK. This is obscene. This is how you get people like Tommy Robinson, because Tommy Robinson now becomes the most salient voice on radical Islam. He is the most well-educated, that's not the most, but for the most part, he is one of the more well-educated and well-nuanced people on this. And people can say, well, he's not that well-educated, not that well-nuanced. Okay, but if everyone else in the mainstream media can't name the problem, they cannot say radical Islam, then anyone who says radical Islam is by definition more right than all those other people. And this is phenomenon, how you get, just average dudes like Tommy Robinson somehow become major, expert figures on the subject because no one will name the problem. And the thing he has over everyone is he will name the problem. So there's that. I mean, just to not once say the motivation of this terrorist attack is beyond absurd. And it's the reason why society is driving us crazy. Now, maybe the biggest omission of the day, you might be thinking I'm going to be talking about the York Students' Federation voting to ban Israelis from campus. After there was an anti-Semitic mob, they voted to ban Jews. That's actually not what I'm going to talk about. We'll talk about it on Wednesday. The biggest story that was not mentioned on the CBC in Canada, this one's actually very close to me, is Mike Ward. For you guys who don't know this story, if you know me, I actually used to do stand-up comedy, but this is sort of what forced me to sort of say my opinions out loud, was the Mike Ward case. Mike Ward was a comedian who made fun of this kid. He, like John Gabriel, whatever. He was this singer. He had like this Make-A-Wish to sing for the Pope, but it turns out he doesn't even have a terminal disease. He's just kind of like ugly is his thing. He made a joke at a club. He didn't even record it. Someone recorded him making a joke, and then he was fined $35,000 for making fun of the kid and $7,000 for making fun of his mom. So $42,000 for making a joke in Canada. And the reason I left the comedy community is because no one there really took a stand. They all pretended, oh, no, this isn't really about free speech, or, global warming's more important than this. There's literally an article where that was written by a comedian. It still infuriates me to this day. But no, here in Canada, the social justice human rights tribunals, and I call them that because they're social justice tribunals by definition. That's how they are made. They have fined a comedian in Canada for making a joke about a public figure. Okay? If I'm the only one who sees this slippery slope, then Canada's already lost. But we have now a country This was just upheld at an appeals court. So this went beyond the human rights tribunals and now into the real courts. The real courts have upheld this ruling, and appeals judge 2-1. So maybe this probably will end up going to the Supreme Court down the road, but still, we not only do the human rights tribunals, but a appeals court agree. You cannot make a joke about a public figure in this country. That is terrifying. Right? So look up the Mike Ward case and just know that, we have freedom of speech in Canada. We do not have freedom of speech in Canada as long as Mike Ward is found guilty. So this needs to go to the Supreme Court. It needs to be overturned. But again, I have no confidence in the Canadian Supreme Court. So that's it for today. I'm going to give, just for the last couple of days of CBC that I've been able to watch periodically on all these stories in general, it's going to get the last 3 days. We'll just give it a 10 out of 10 of the Rosemary Barton scale of bias. And I'm going to be very busy tomorrow. Again, I got some meetings to be in. Maybe there'll be an episode out later tomorrow night. But maybe we'll see you Monday. All right. Good night.